And we're recording. Get in. So I bid you welcome to another episode of the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. And I'm very excited to have here in the clearing today the lovely Lizzie Hodgson. Hurrah!
Hello.
Lizzie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You are, if I may, I'm significantly older, which is not important, but you're very in touch with the youth in that your company, Think Nation, is all about connecting thought leaders to young people and about making technological advances, which to some of the more technically phobic people out there is really a bit, well, it's very strategically important because the change in terms of technology, the pace of change is extraordinary. You can tell me much more about that in your own way shortly, but I'm delighted to have you here. And I'm particularly delighted to have you here because I way back when adored your mother, and we can maybe talk about your mum a little bit as well.
Who didn't adore my mother?
Beg your pardon?
Who didn't adore my mother?
I really, really adored her. She was very, very kind to me in my sort of late 20s and befriended my good lady wife of now, of now 30 years ago. So it's half a lifetime ago. But it's just really lovely because you are a delightful personification of her in her memory, actually. You're
and therefore I've known you that long then.
You have, absolutely. So Lizzie, very welcome. And we're going to talk you through some nice storytelling archetypes that I like to call juicy storytelling archetypes, where we're bringing you to a clearing, which will be a metaphorical clearing of your choice. Yeah. And then within the clearing, we've got an apple tree where we're going to shake your apple tree to see which apples fall out. I know you've got lots to tell us because you're also a double TEDx speaker. And then within the clearing, we've got some alchemy and some gold. We've got a lovely storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I'm going to award you with a cake at the end of the conversation.
Can it be a vegan, gluten-free cake, please?
Yes, and bless you, you're the first person that specifically asked for that. And the answer is yes. Vegan and gluten-free are in the bag. Fantastic. So first question, if somebody rather clunkily asks you at a dinner party and does that rather cringing thing where they just turn to you and make you do all the work and say, what do you do? What's your favourite way of answering that question?
I think my favourite way is I don't actually know what I do, if that makes sense, because I have quite an eclectic range of things that I do. And I think that it's come into great use since the start of the lockdown as well, because we've had to sort of change our ways a little bit and tap into talents that we perhaps didn't tap into before. But on the whole, I'm all about communications. I'm all about how do we communicate better? How do we communicate big ideas, little ideas, and how do we get excited about those things? And how do we find solutions through those communications? I try to approach the world with how am I going to solve this, or how are we going to solve something, or what big thing can we do together? And that big thing actually might be something like very simple, like I just want to make my day work better. How do we unblock that? And I've realized that that's what I do, not just in my professional work, but I enjoy doing that with my peers. Not that I sit down and go, right, what can we unblock for you today?
Yeah.
It's more a case of, I just think more than ever we need to learn how to communicate better, and we need to learn how to listen, and we need to find compromise, and we need to find that space where we can both kind of stand our ground with what we need, but also understand that we have to reach out and find that middle ground together, because it's worrying me that we are not able to do that. And the reason I'm interested in working with young people is because they more than ever are requiring the tools and the strategies to do this better than we are, because we are hopeless. Yes. We have proven it, and we are seeing it unravel in many ways at the moment. And so I want to work with young people how can we tackle these big problems or little problems, and how can we communicate better? So it's all about communication, and we don't get it right. I don't get it right. I'm not like, I'm sure you could ask my wife whether I'm the best communicator ever. I'm sure she would argue against that.
Such a rich answer already. We've got the need to be agile in modern times, the need to be truly present and connected to now. You're talking about how to make things better today. There's something very profound about your desire to keep people grounded and in the present when solving problems that are right there in front of us that are absolutely critical for us all.
because I think the other thing is that we have a tendency to look at other people to sort things out, even with whatever thing's happening now, and you know, wherever you are on the, I don't know, political spectrum or whatever you want to call it, it seems to be that it's somebody else's problem. You've got to sort this out. It's your fault. You did this. And when I look at young people, I do kind of like feel like, yeah, my generation and perhaps the generation above us. So we're both Gen X, you and I. I think
you might be being kind to me, because I know you talk about
Yes,
Alpha and Generation Z, and,
yeah.
and I'm of that generation where I'm slightly confused about what generation.
You're on the hybrid, aren't you, of the Boomers and the Gen X?
Well, just to put you under pressure in terms of what label it is, I was born in 1962, so
You are right on the cusp.
Right on the cusp. Yes.
Right on the
and then
cusp.
what generation?
But because I know you, and because I've seen, you know, the work you do, I think you're more of a Gen X. I see more of a Gen X. Now the Gen X, the Boomers, nobody had it perfect. Nobody's had it perfect. And if you want to go right the way back, you can start off with the greatest generation, which was the First World War. And then there was the silent generation. And interestingly, the silent generation is the generation that my mother belonged to, because she wasn't quite a boomer. She was born a bit too late. She was born just at the tail end of the Second World War, so she didn't quite make a boomer. And my dad was definitely the silent generation. And these were the generation that just did. They just got on and did. And there was they just did it. And there was they couldn't imagine, you know, the platforms that we have. They couldn't imagine the articulation that we have now, the opportunities to voice opinions and all of that. And so they just did as they were told. And I think that generation really did come up against when the Boomers came in. They were like, you know, the NHS came in, there was free healthcare, the sexual revolution came along, we were starting to see the impact of technology, freedom of ideas, freedom of thought were coming up. And with that came not many responsibilities, actually. And then the reality hit, kind of like started to hit, you know, the sort of 70s and 80s. And then when our generation came to inhabit the world, we were left with, we were inhabiting a world where the Cold War was, you know, that was everything. I remember When the Wind Blows. I remember, you know, the leaflets that came through the door. I remember being told at school, if a bomb drops, this is what you do. And, you know, you're little. Mm-hmm. And we also grew up with the threat of the IRA.
Yeah.
So we had, is the world going to end because of bombs? We had the Cold War. We had IRA. In the UK, we had the IRA. And then you start to think, well, we have something in common, therefore, with Gen Z. The Boomers have stuff in common with the Millennials, because the Millennials, and I'm not saying the Millennials have had it easy whatsoever, but it was a slightly different. It was pre-2001. It was pre the New World Order that happened after the Twin Towers dropped. So the Millennials had a different experience than we had. They had something more akin to you can do whatever you want. We believe in you. You can become whatever you want. It was those messages, you know, that.
It strikes me you're very acutely aware of your position and our position in history, and the fact that change is, you know, really important now, the ability to be adaptable. And so I just love the fact that you're very, very versed in the different stages towards, you know, how do we remain.
Yeah, it also, you know, I've got to be careful that I don't plump from everybody into those. But we're talking in generalist terms.
Yeah.
You know, you can see these trends in generalist terms. But what I think is really important to understand in all of that is this: we have, as humans, we have this unrelenting desire to communicate.
And when you said at the beginning how to communicate better, that's such a resonance with, you know, if you ask me my bish bash bosh of what I think I do is I help people to communicate better. So I completely relate and find that really resonant.
And within that, I think that what's happening is, you know, we remember life before email. We remember life certainly before social media. But what's happening is, as most things with technology, we invent these things and then don't realize the unforeseen consequences. And unforeseen consequences don't have to be negative. They can be positive and negative. But what I think we're feeling at the moment is the negative unforeseen consequences of having these platforms where anybody can say anything.
And historically goes back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We have created a
Yeah,
monster.
we've created a monster. Now that monster
Yeah.
can be wonderful as well. I often say technology is neither good nor bad. It's what we do with it that matters.
Yeah.
So, but what we're finding is this kind of like free for all of opinion and free for all of ideas. And that's, in one way, that's wonderful because we found this outlet for all, but in another way, we are seeing horrific fractures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got the rise of populism, and I'm not a fan of populism. I happily say that I'm not going to. There's no sitting on the fence for me. I think it's dangerous. I think that we're becoming increasingly selfish. I think that we are, and that selfishness is acting out. And what worries me about young people is that they are seeing, this is the negative side of it, the damaging impact that having an opinion, an idea that's often unchecked, it's just allowed to grow. And because people are feeling, I think at this point in history, we're feeling lost. We want to grab a hold of things. And like, this isn't just one or two people, this isn't there millions, if not billions. Mm-hmm. And so when you get that kind of opportunity for people to say, hey, the earth is flat. Hey, you know, there is a massive conspiracy theory that's happening in America, and, you know, all the Democrats are pedophiles, and there's a horrible, horrible thing happening over there. And, you know, the only way is Trump can save us. And it doesn't matter if it's the other way around. It doesn't matter, you know, if it was the far left saying it.
It's sort of gossip and all the damaging aspects of gossip.
It's become real life. It's moved from the anonymous chat board, you know, boards that you'd have in, you know, Reddit and places like that. And I know Reddit are trying to really, really stamp down on this.
Yeah.
To become, they've manifested into real life. So now we're seeing this pour out with the conspiracy theories, the anti-vaxxers, this paranoia, and it's paranoia en masse. And what we don't have is the ability to counter it, because the argument is so strong for them that actually that's part of the conspiracy for them to tell you you're being paranoid. Mm. And so what we've got is, that's just one example of how technology is enabling our deepest fears to be realized in real world. But it also, on the flip side, astonishing things that can happen, not just with social media, but with technology as well. But as is the case with humans, we never know where the pendulum's going to go. We never know how it's going to pan out. And so what I want to try and do is get that communication going with young people to say, question things a little bit more, imagine the best case scenario.
Yeah.
No good has ever come from fracturing society, or, you know, we just look at the Second World War. It was their fault. It was the Jews' fault. It was the homosexuals. It was the deviants. It was anyone who looked different from the Aryan. Anyone different from me is wrong. And that's what we're starting to see. So I want to use technology, or encourage the use of technology, to bring people together. And I think that is something that there's an appetite for that within young people, because they don't want to grow up in a world that looks like the world that we've created. Every generation wants to reinvent the world.
So in a nutshell, there is a quagmire of work to be done, and your platform through which you like to transmit this, I understand, is called Think Nation. That's the sort of the T-bar that you stand on as the platform for amplification. Yeah,
but also it's through other ways. So I mentor young people as well, and I'm at this point in my life trying to think of ways in which I can just use what I've learned with Think Nation and my mentoring, and do things in a slightly more. The problem with doing things online is, at the moment, is that you need people in the room to really make change. But I'm trying to think, how can we affect change whilst not being in the room? Mm-hmm. And the way it's been done so far, there are some really strong ways that it's happened, but there's also some scary ways in which I don't want it to go, you know, I just want people to feel safe when they're thinking about what they can do with technology. And I'm in the process of rethinking how we can do that myself as well, and constantly rethinking it.
And it's too early on to say what's your your best piece of advice to take us to the future. We'll come on to that at the end with what I'm going to award you with at the end. So, okay. So I'm going to bring you into this area called the clearing now. And where do you go in all this convoluted landscape of complexity? Where do you go to get clear, clutter-free and innovative, would you say, Lizzie Hodgson?
So I wrote some notes down, and now I'm looking at my notes because I knew this, obviously this question was coming up. And I'm not even going to bother with my notes anymore because I'm constantly contradicting myself, because sometimes my clearing is, I don't know, 20 minutes whilst I'm trundling around Tesco's with my mask on. And I'm just, trying not to pick up everything and put it back down again. And I'll just have, I'll use that time to just think about the what ifs. I'm always thinking what if. And my clearing is probably it's definitely a state of mind rather than an actual location. It's a not worrying about stuff. I've got very good about not worrying about stuff. And then when I don't,
and there's an irony in there, because it sounds like you're always on the move and agitating for the next thought. So it's lovely to hear that you can think about a place where you're not thinking, because you're obviously very deeply thinking how you're coming across. I mean, that it's a compliment. There's a lot going on there about lots of problems to solve.
Yeah, but equally, I've learned not to worry too much about them, because what I've learned is worrying and stress actually is counterproductive to creativity. I know some people thrive off that. I thrive off deadlines. I thrive off that kind of like that energy of I've got to get this done by this time. But where my clearing is, I've learned not to be stressed whilst trying to think about things.
Well, tell you what, let me reframe it then. Let's give you a day off from all the trials and tribulations that are playing on your mind, and you've got a complete carte blanche. You can go to a clearing of your choice. What would that be?
Are you talking about literally a place?
Or metaphorical?
It would probably be, it's where I feel calmest, and I can feel just where I feel calm. Like right now, I think this is quite a good clearing for me, because I feel calm.
So there's clearing in connection then. So the fact we're connecting makes you feel it's a clearing.
But to get to that point, I guess I've had to get to my clearing has taken me years to get to this state of mind. Years of terrible things.
Okay, so it's still a complicated clearing. I haven't got to a sort of, a beach or a vista or.
No. Okay. So here you go. So if you want to think of it this way, I live very close to the sea. The sea is literally less than 5 minutes walk out of my front door. I went down there this morning. I see the sea every day, and I make sure I see the sea every day. And I don't just kind of like glance at it. I've got a lovely dog, and he likes splashing down to the sea. And I went down there, and I knew I needed to make 5 minutes. I just sat there for 5 minutes, and I just closed my eyes and I listened to the sea. And I feel very connected to nature all the time, which is why the big picture stuff to me, it doesn't feel completely impossible, because nature is never ending, and I feel very much part of that. I feel very much part of, like, I'm going to die in the end, and this is getting really deep, but this is part of it. The reason I have no fear about things is because I know that I'm going to end up in the sea at some point, and my little atoms will end up somewhere else, and that gives me great comfort, huge comfort, which allows me to get to that clearing and not worry, and know that I will just put one foot in front of the other. I will, sometimes I have to do a bit of work over here that's not so comfortable for me, but that's just to pay the mortgage, but that's okay. That doesn't define me. What defines me is more than that, is my place in all of this.
So it's a strange metaphor to use at this time, but the idea of cooking on gas. I feel we're cooking on gas because we've got you sat on the beachfront still for 5 minutes, knowing that that's a window you found for yourself. Yeah. So within that clearing now, I'm going to join you in a clearing, and I'm going to bring in a tree, and we're going to shake this tree to see which apples fall out. And the apples are this storytelling exercise that you've had about 5 minutes to think about. Is it a crab
apple tree?
It can be whatever you like.
No, because it's on the beach.
Yes, it can be crab apples. You can have that. So you've got, it's 4 things that have shaped you.
Yep, 4 things that have shaped me.
Lizzie Hodgson. 3 things that inspire you.
Yeah.
2 things that really never fail to grab your attention. And then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you that we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. don't panic, Mrs. Mannery. You don't have to shake the entire tree out, but it's your choice now to pick up an apple of your choice.
I think that some of these are actually connected. Some of these can't be, you can't have one without the other. So the things that have shaped me and inspire me are very, very close as well. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, and I didn't think this would ever happen to me, but it's only been in the last probably last 7-8 years that I've realized how much my family has shaped me, for good and for negative. And my family, with the dynamic I had with my parents, and I still feel I have a dynamic with my parents. Both my parents have died, but the feeling that I have with my parents, I'm not in any way a religious person, not even vaguely spiritual, I don't think, just just this thing that's occupying this planet for a little bit. And but I have this connection with my family, and it's got stronger. And it's not out of guilt that I want to do well. It's kind of out of, I am a result of not just my parents, but my brothers and my cousins and my nephews and all of the family that went before them and then before them and before them. And we are the needle of any one of our generation and the people that went before us. And I feel excited by that. And so that shapes me. But I don't know much about the rest of my history, but it just blows my mind that, like, I'm that crest of the wave, and they are the body of sea behind me. It blows my mind. So that shapes me. And on a more kind of like practical, yeah, absolutely, my parents, without a shadow of a doubt, my parents. Just two of the most, if not the most important people in my life. They set the boundaries. They taught me, they genuinely taught me the principles of what I believe are right and wrong. They shaped me. They weren't perfect. They messed up. They weren't these, I wouldn't say that they were the best, they were the most awesome people ever, but they were awesome to me. And even with their mistakes, and the older I get, the more I realize how they managed their mistakes was actually, sometimes they messed up and sometimes they didn't, but that's human.
And sorry if I nearly interrupted you there. I have a binary view on that because I'm sorry to say I never knew your father, but I knew your mum really, really well. And in fact, I probably met her around about the exact time of them no longer being together again.
You did, yes.
And that was just a very pivotal time in your, as you say, being the needle on the crest of the wave. It was
really pivotal. When my parents split up, that was a big thing, and it wasn't a great experience for me. And I didn't look after myself. I was not a happy person during that time, and I didn't know how to manage it. And it was only a few years later, like decades later actually, when my dad died, that I actually finally addressed what had happened back then. Mm-hmm. And then there's this forgiveness happened, and I'd got a lot closer to my parents. I wasn't that close to them at the time, but I got a lot closer to my parents as I got older. And weirdly, I feel as close to my parents as I ever have done, even though neither of them are here anymore. And so the parents have shaped me. My family has shaped me. My brothers, they're important to me. They play a huge part of my life. And so that side of things. And then also, you talk about your friends. I've only got a handful of friends, and that doesn't sound who I really like. That's it. And the two main ones, there are others around it, but the two main ones I've known since I was 11, and I knew the other one. She was the year above me, so I've known her since I was 11 as well. But really, since I was 18, the other one. So we've got the childhood friends, and they've massive impact on me, huge. But it's that, I think what it is, it's foundations, and I feel like I've got strong foundations, even though I wasn't that popular at school. I didn't really have friends at school. I didn't, and these are friends who weren't out of school, so I didn't really have that structure of, oh yeah, school was brilliant, it didn't bother me. But that helped me become the independent person I am. So, and also Kipper, my dog, who's trying to get out of the room right now.
Feel free to let Kipper out.
I can't work out trying to get in or out. I don't know.
wouldn't want Kipper's demise to be part of this.
So Kipper, my dog, sounds really weird, but he's shaped me. I've had him 11 years. He got me through an extraordinarily horrible heartbreak breakup. He got me through my dad's death. He got me through my mum's. Well, I have to say, my wife also got me through my mother.
Quick shout out to Holly there.
But you know, he's just an important, you know, role to me, and he gives me a purpose to get up in the morning and go for my run, and he gives me that shape. And animals on the whole, animals are really important. I don't know, this is sounds like some kind of weird therapy now.
You know, it's great. And also what I really enjoyed is the sense that we talked about presence at the beginning, about your presence within this historical epoch, you know, this time, but also your parents are still present, and also your friends who've got your back are still present, yes. Even though they're not physically there. There's just a sense of you being held in a place of presence, which is really just enjoyable to notice, actually.
And things that you asked, the things that inspire me as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you? Again,
grab your attention and then
just people who want to do things better, and can say, look, we can change this, we can make this better. And it can be a very simple thing within, you know, the workplace, or it can be something more complicated within, you know, let's change the way we're trying to feed the world. My elder brother's working with an AI company, and it's astonishing what they're trying to do to change the way, you know, how can AI help with crop and farming, and that blows my mind. So it can be something really extreme, it can be like, you know, big stuff like that, but it also can be little things like, how are we going to clear up the beach? Let's clear up the beach. Let's just clear up the beach. Let's just get a bag and clear up the beach. Little things, and people doing little things for each other, and hope, stories of little pockets of hope, little pockets of love, and little pockets of joy that you get from that. And that's something that it's all around us. It's all around us, and you can choose to tap into it, or you can choose not to. And I choose to tap into that, and that I find inspiring.
A little pocket of hope. I'm hearing Kipper in there as well, because he's not a big dog, is he? Let's be.
He's a little pocket of hope. He's a little pocket of hope, and like, just, you know, now I got married. Well, you were there. I got married just over a year ago, and people were like, oh, it'll change you. And I was waiting for it to change in a kind of like, oh God, what does it do? Do you turn into this selfish, horrible thing? And all it's done is made me appreciate how important life is, because now I've got somebody who I want her life to be great. I want her to thrive. I want her, and that is just a wonderful thing as well.
Do you know what? There's the Elton John song. The Elton John song needs to chime in now. How wonderful life is with you in the world. It's just blue. I don't know whether that's a track you like, but that just came.
Well, I like it now, Chris. All right.
All right. So we're still shaking your tree, and
shake me tree.
Anything else you want to tell me of those apples, crab apples on the beach? Okay,
something that I find really, really, it both upsets me but also drives me is social injustice. I can't bear injustice, and so even if it's things like, I don't know, somebody who's been rude to somebody, like in the street, and I've heard it, I will say something to them.
Good on you.
I can't bear it. I can't bear any kind of power dynamic that, for want of a better term, a bully can take away something from somebody who doesn't need it, or social injustice that we're seeing at the moment it's being exacerbated with the whole thing we're all going through with COVID-19. That's social injustice, through to just fairness. I think I've picked that up from young people, because young people have I didn't realize they had so much of a kind of insight of what's right and wrong. And I'm finding, thankfully, that when you talk to young people, that right and wrong does seem to be, they do still have it in their teens. And it is quite a simple way of looking at things.
And the simplicity you're describing in, if there's injustice, call it out. If
yes, call it out.
Call it out. I love the fact that you would, walk the talk and talk the walk, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
if you're in the street and you hear an unkindness happening, you would mention something.
Just say it. And I think people have got to be, I know that there's, you know, we've seen that, we see in the press that there's a lot of violence out there and that we're all horrible to each other. But actually, I think if you can take the time to help people, you know, if somebody, I don't know, just needs a helping hand or something, whatever it is, just do it. There's no, I just don't understand it. I don't understand why anyone would want to make somebody else's life worse off by inaction.
Love that.
I just don't get it.
Just call it out, just do it. Really
Do
nice,
it.
simple messages.
Yeah, and really small. These aren't big things. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to rock up to Number 10 and rewrite their policy on, you know, social housing as much as I'd love to. I'm not quite qualified for that.
You could probably sort of trademark, call it out, but just do it. I think Nike
Call it
are
out.
the game.
But what we can do is tiny weeny ripples of acts of kindness to each other.
Lovely.
And acts of, just imagine you within their place. Just imagine you're in that spot, in their place.
And empathy right there. You know, just role reverse, empathize.
Yeah, empathize.
Society. Just
empathize. And it's not that difficult. I find it's harder to be mean. I think there's so much more energy to be mean.
Well, there's that fact, isn't it, that it physically you need more muscles to frown than you do to smile. So actually, it's hard work being a miserable git, really. But
it is It is.
Yes.
Hard work. I'll tell my cat that, who is a miserable git.
Right. That's probably because you're lavishing all your attention on Kipper and more on Kipper than your wife as well. It's just really not very fair, is it, really? But anyway, we could move away from the tree now. Let's give it one more shake. Anything else going to come out of your tree, madam?
What was another thing? What was another
Quite an unusual fact about you, Lizzie Hodgson, that we couldn't know.
God. See, I don't know. I just don't know, because I'm also quite a private person. So I'm not one of those people. If anyone who's I've not been on social media the last few months because I've just felt overwhelmed by I didn't want to be part of it, because everyone was just like, and so, but if you look back at my timeline, there's nothing personal there. I'm usually like, here's a nice article, or here's something that's quite interesting.
By the way, there's a delicious irony in you being all about, you know, the advent of technology and social media as platforms for conduits for change. And what's so lovely and refreshing is to hear that you too, even though that's your raison d'etre in part, have taken a bit of a social media break in this period.
I think it's important to, because I think that you can get lost in what the point of it is. And the point of it for me was always about sharing. I do occasionally put, you know, a little bit of like, oh, that's not great, at Boris Johnson kind of thing.
Nudge, nudge. Yes.
I'm sure he's waiting for my tweets. But on the whole, I choose to use it in a particular way. And that again gives me calm. It just makes me calm. And I'm finding, I'm very strict about how I use it. I don't, no phones in the bedroom. That's it. You know, it's done. We're done. And because I know how all consuming it can be.
Yes.
And I've been down that route, and I don't want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
And it comes back to my state of mind, my clearing.
Yes.
So your clearing is something that I think that you have to work on all the time, and not assume it's always going to be there, because and there's a discipline to it but it's a good discipline, because I just want to do stuff that's going to make me feel clear and capable and ready and energized.
Yeah.
And sometimes social media can have the absolute opposite effect of that. And it's built to be addictive.
Yes.
It's built so that you get your little ping, that little red dot, you refresh. That's by design. That's not by accident.
Yes.
So when you know it's by design, therefore the onus is on you to take control of it.
Yes. There's a very pivotal Netflix documentary about just that at the moment. I'm going to call it social media, but it'll probably have a different title to that, and I've probably given it a mishandle there. But yes, it's the sign of our times, but refreshing to hear that you two are using it very specifically and selectively.
And I think what's happening with young people as well is that because they've grown up on it, I don't have a problem with them using it as more than me, I think the problem is what they're seeing and how it's reflecting on their self-worth and their self-esteem. But they have been brought up with it to use it in a different way, or rather in a way that has their capacity for it, I think, is greater than
Well,
ours.
there's a nice quote out there about just the deluge of information, which is talk is cheap because supply exceeds demand.
Yeah.
There's just so much information out there that
Yeah.
we can suffer from information overload.
And I'm, I've had conversations with various young people, and they do take breaks from it. They do. Not everyone does.
Yeah.
And what gets me is that, and I've said this so many times, that you can't be down on young people for using social media. The reason you can't be down on them is because we built it for them. We push their homework online. We push their bus tickets online. We push anything that we want them to buy online with their phones. So everything we do is being pushed for them on their phone, sorry. And then we say, why are you on your phone so much?
Yes.
Because you've built my world so that it is on this phone. And so that frustrates me when young people are told not to be on their phone as much, when actually you've built that world so that they're on their phone all the time. You've built their world so they don't have time away from their screen. You've built, and particularly with lockdown, the entertainment was online, education was online, how they access different things is all online. Everything's online. We've built that world.
And even the Muppet Gallery of Zoom, even this podcast that I'm doing with you now has come about because of this advent of the pandemic and being adaptive.
You can't be down on them for then spending 9-10 hours a day online. What we've got to do is teach them how it's okay to be offline. Because I had a conversation with one young person, and they said, I was doing some research around like young people's use online, and they said when they're online, when they're on Instagram or whatever it is, they don't like it, they feel inadequate. But when they're off, they know that they're being left out, and there's a social stigma that comes to not being online. So it's a lose-lose, and we've built that. We've built that, and the advertising and the hooks and the Facebooks and the way we want them to be on it. It's money that's driving it.
Yeah, of course.
So you how dare you get down on young people? It's their fault for using them all the time.
Yes, and Lily, my daughter's just back at university, and of course in society at the moment, students, young people are being vilified. Somebody on Radio 4 said something very incidental but profound, which was a bit, you thought, oh God, that's clever.
Yeah.
Universities are becoming pessary dishes for and you thought, oh my God, I mean, that's a clever thing to say, but, to vilify young people for just, taking up their right to get on with their futures.
I think that we've got to be really careful how, again, and it comes down to this sort of, we're dividing people again all the time. And I know I started this off by saying, oh, your generation is where it gets dangerous is that we're all pointing to each other that it's your fault.
Yeah, deflecting responsibility and accountability, and coming full circle is about owning our own difference and our own contribution.
Yeah. So
let's move you away from the tree now. We're still in the clearing. We're going to talk about alchemy and gold now. When you, the lovely Lizzie Hodgson, are totally in purpose and in flow, what do you like to bring to the world in a happy way?
I want people to feel safe, and I want people to feel capable, and that they actually are listened to and have everyone has a voice. I don't think it's a case of, oh, let's find your voice. Or everyone's got one. It's just whether you're in a room where everyone else shouts louder than you. So I like to think that I can help people articulate things and feel heard. And whether something happens from that is a different matter, because it can be heard. But and reassurance. That's one thing I've noticed I do with young people, and it's either through work, like, so the project I'm working on at the moment, there's a young woman who I'm working with, and I've just realized how anxious people are, and there's an anxiety that we all have, and I just want to reassure people, like, particularly young people, you don't know what you're doing. It's okay, you don't know what you're doing. I still don't know what I'm doing.
We're all just winging it.
We're all just joining in.
Yes, and you have a beautiful wife gate crashing in the background there.
There she goes.
We saw you. She thinks she crept in and crept out, but we saw you, Holly. That's all good. So I'm hearing there, sorry, that you are a great empowerer and a reassurer. You want to,
yeah, but I think it's really important for young people to think that like I'm in my now coming to my late 40s. I don't feel anywhere close to my conclusion of what I'm going to do. I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I think that state of mind where it's okay, and it comes back to that fearlessness. Do not worry. You do not need to know what you're going to do in 10 years' time. Any of us. Have
you heard that lovely expression, we're all just winging it?
We are winging it. We're winging it, but we're winging it with a kind of, I do have a, obviously I don't just wake up in the morning and go, oh, what shall I do now? I obviously have structure.
Yeah.
But it's the big picture stuff that I both am concerned about and I try to tackle, but at the same time, don't worry too much about, because particularly on a personal level. And I think that's come through because there has been, I've experienced loss. And I think when you experience loss and you still get up the next day and life still continues and the sun still rises and it hurts like hell, but actually lovely, lovely things can happen as well.
If you stay present.
If you stay present.
And if I may, that gives me a beautiful segue into something really profound that you've achieved and done, which is I think it was your first of 2 TED Talks, when you talk about an escalator moment.
It's my second one. That was my second one.
Sorry, that's the one I've heard, but I'd really like you to just tell us a little bit of that story of the escalator moment, if you don't mind.
So I had, for me, I mean, everyone has, but a lot of things happened to me within a very short space of time. So my dad died. My partner of 12 years broke up with me. I had a role in that breakup, but it was still tough. And my company that I had at the time, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had to close the company. I had the grief of my father and the breakup of a relationship, which saw the sale of a house, all of that kind of stuff. It was like, horrific. All within about 7 weeks, all this happened. And it just was too much for me. My brain couldn't manage it. And so I was very much in a spiral of depression, really, really bad depression.
Diagnosed depression, or just
later on it was diagnosed. I went to see a therapist about a year later. All this happened, and I was it was so severe they thought I had post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow. So you've really gone to the dark side.
Really, yeah. And so this moment happened where I was on this train going into London, and I can't even remember why I was on the train. And what I think I missed out on the TEDx talk was my ex was on the train. We had to go into London for some reason together, and I couldn't even bear to be close to her. It was just every time I was close to it, I couldn't stop crying. It was because I couldn't grieve. I couldn't work out who I was grieving for, and I couldn't grieve for my dad properly. I couldn't grieve for anything properly. So we got out, and I just rushed off ahead, and I started to go up this escalator, and I couldn't get any further because there's this guy in the way. And on escalators, the etiquette is that you're supposed to stand to one side, and on escalators you stand to the right. And he was just standing straight in the middle, and I was like, I'm gonna have to just push past him or something. Anyway, he turned around and he recognized me, and he said Lizzie Hodgson, and I couldn't quite remember his name. And that moment, he just got to the top, and I just told him everything. That he's like, what's happened to your business? Because he'd heard about my business closing. He's like, what's happened? And I just told him everything. In that minute, I just told him everything, or however long it was. And I just thought, I actually did think at the time, this is insane what you told, like this poor guy. I mean, it really is. When people ask, how are you? We often go, I'm fine, thanks. And, your world could be imploding. Well, my world, it was imploding. And he was like, how are you? I was like, well, let me tell you. And he was absolutely amazing. And he just was like, look, come and have a chat. And I went and had a chat, and I ended up getting a job at the company he was at, and they didn't even know what job I was going to have. We made it up. They just knew that I was a talent that they wanted. And they weren't put off by the fact that I was, and I had, even when I went to work, I was struggling when I got there. And it was very difficult, but I really, I mean, this company was amazing. And that was my escalator moment. So my escalator moment is I was so engaged in kind of like looking down and thinking my world is coming to an end. And all I had to do was look up, and there was a guy there who recognized me and saw something in me that I couldn't even recognize. I couldn't even see it in myself. It was lost.
I've heard it couched recently where even in the darkness, if you look down or look around you, there will be somewhere
that was it.
Golden thread.
Yeah, and that was it. And so when I describe to people how I was feeling, it's often is, imagine you're standing on kind of like a hill, and imagine you're looking out on, I don't know, the Mendits, something like that. You're looking out, and my world that I was looking out on was apocalyptic, and that's how I saw my world. It was apocalyptic. There wasn't a path anywhere that I could find forward, and that's all I kept seeing when I imagined my world. It was just utterly destroyed. It was like something out of Hiroshima. And that, what happened as a result of what he did and the company that I went to work for, was when I started to think about my world, I actually realized there was a little bit of a path appearing and a little bit of green. And so I kept focusing on this Hiroshima landscape, but it was the West Country. I don't know why, but it was the West Country. And even now when I think about where I am, it's green, and I can see paths and I see options. And this is very much why I'm not worried, because I know that the paths, and even if the bomb drops again, metaphorically, let's hope, I know that things will grow again, things will come about again. And it'll be this time, not just because somebody else has seen it in me, but it's because I've seen it in me before. And that's why when my mum died, circumstances in my life were a lot happier by the time my mum died. But the mechanisms that I had was like, good things will come from this. Amazing things will come from this. And that's how I see it now. And so when you're faced with devastation, ideally you don't want to get to that point in the first place, but if you are faced with it, just look for those, imagine the green, imagine that spark, imagine that there is light, but you sometimes need somebody else to help you find that light. And that was my escalator moment. So I say, look up, always look up, because you just don't know who's there, who sees you and can see, and there will be somebody. There will always be somebody.
And does this sort of conduit or gatekeeper to your future, does he know? He must have seen the TED Talk, I'm assuming. So
I think he's seen it, but he lives in Berlin now, works for a big company now, and I reached out. People who worked for him knew it happened, but I've never said his name out loud, and I won't say his name out loud.
Okay.
But he knows that he changed my life. He knows it.
And what I find really profound and really interesting is, in our lives, we don't quite truly appreciate sometimes the impact we're having on a fellow human being. We can't always know, but that's such a lovely example of just profound catalytic change to find green shoots of recovery or the golden thread.
Whatever it is, and it's whatever makes you. I think it's the human endeavor. I think that's what it comes down to. And I'm not saying that people who don't have it, people who never find it, they're somehow weaker, or I don't believe that. I think that one thing I've learned around depression and mental health is it's not about weakness, it's not about strength, and it frustrates me when I hear people, you found the strength to go on. It's like, no, there's a different dynamic happening.
I found
a way.
Yeah.
And if those people who don't find a way, it doesn't make them failures or weak or anything. I think that sometimes when people endure the most extreme forms of depression, they are in some ways the strongest, because they make the ultimate decisions that are incredible for other people. But it's about being there, which comes back to my conversation of like, just reach out to people, be nice to people. We've seen it this year with so many people who've taken their own lives. You do not know what is going on with other people, so just give them a bit of slack.
Yeah,
just give them a little bit of slack.
and if I may, what I'd like to do now is bring you to the point where I'm going to award you, Lizzie Hodgson, with a cake, and your opportunity now is to put a cherry on the cake. And this is open to interpretation. What I'd like to invite you to do is share with us your passing.
Not share the cake.
No, it's all yours. What is it? It's a vegan something cake with
Vegan and gluten-free.
Love that. So with the cherry, it can't be a glacé cherry, presumably it's got to be a real one. But anyway, this can take the form of, the cherry on the cake is the best advice you've ever been given. It could be a favorite inspirational quote, or it could be just a parting thought to put the cherry on the cake of this conversation. So where would you like to go with that particular?
Well, it's a cliche, but my dad always said, keep on keeping on, which is kind of like become a little mantra. So I have that in my head, but I don't know, actually. I always ask people, I hope you're well, or how are you? Again, I think it comes back to just the parting shot is just take time out to listen to other people and check in on them, even if you don't like them, even if they're the people at work that annoy the hell out of you, and you've pigeonholed them to be this, that, and the other. Just give them a little bit of warmth, and because it's amazing if you're nice to people, it's amazing how often that will come back. I don't know. Is that a cherry? Or is that just...
There's again resonance, because there's a poster in my very, very room which is work hard and be nice to people, and there's just this, and I hope you forgive me saying this. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, and also being nice is not a weakness.
Being kind, being nice is not a weakness.
Not a weakness.
And because I knew your mother so well, I know, and forgive, this is going to be slightly cheesy, but I know she'd be incredibly proud of you, because she was a real giver. You know, she was a drama teacher for most of her life, and I was always very struck with her deep warmth and profound humanity.
Yes, and now you've made me well up.
So Lizzie Hodgson, it has been a tremendous gift and pleasure talking to you here on the Good Listening To podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for doing this, because I can't wait to see all the other people that you speak with.
Wonderful.
It's a great idea. It's brilliant.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, and good night.
Goodbye.